The book of Genesis is a complex yet simple book. It's simple enough for children to understand the basic concepts about God, His creation, and the role of humans, but also deep enough for the most weathered of theologians to inspect and ponder the meaning of one word for their entire lives. At face value, one might assume that Genesis 1 is merely describing Earth's origins in a literal 6-day event, and he or she may be right about that. But if we want to be Bereans, searching the scriptures, testing all things, some of our 21st century creationist presuppositions must be checked at the door. And what we might find is that the universe and the earth is a lot older than just 7,000 years, based on the scripture. Let's take a closer look at the most read verse in the Bible.
Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
This is the standard translation that the majority of us are familiar with. However, if we look at the most accurate Hebrew of Genesis 1:1, we get one word added that may throw a wrench in our interpretation.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. What?
In the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth. Young's literal translation. By allowing the Hebrew to speak for itself, we can see that what is being described in Genesis 1:1 may potentially be the beginning of an event, and not the beginning of absolutely everything. The event here is God's ordering of creation, but not the exact moment when He made everything. When you cross-reference in the beginning of, we get passages that describe the beginning of an event, like in Ezra 4:6. In the beginning of the reign of Xerxes, they lodged an accusation against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. In the beginning of can describe the beginning of an action. In Genesis 1:1, the action would be God forming His material matter, and the actions later in the chapter would be Him filling that which He has formed with His created life, namely birds, fish, animals, and humans. Therefore, if the beginning is the starting point of an event, then one would be fair to ask whether there were events which preceded this event of ordering of His creation. Verse 2 seems to indicate that there was an event that took place before God began to order everything.
The earth was without form and void.
While a possible reading based on the Hebrew can be, and the earth became formless and void, New Messianic Version. The word became could suggest a previous event which had a cause and effect to the world becoming formless and void. This translation is interesting given the fact that when the Hebrew phrase formless and void, tohu wabohu, is cross-referenced elsewhere in the Bible, Isaiah 45:1 says that God did not create the earth formless and void, but to be inhabited. So this confuses the assumption that Genesis 1 is describing this absolute starting point of all things, because Isaiah says that the initial state of the earth was an inhabited state, not one of chaos and formlessness as Genesis 1:2 says. Another cross-reference for tohu wabohu is Jeremiah 4:23, when a prophecy about the destruction of Judah by the hands of the Babylonians is given. The land or earth is described as being without form and void, engulfed in chaos with no light being given in the aftermath of the Babylonians' destruction. Could this be the sort of context that the reader is thrown into in Genesis 1:2? This idea of the earth becoming formless and void opens up an entire can of worms.
Can open worms everywhere?
For a previous creation that was destroyed and fell into chaos. And what we have described in Genesis 1 is not God creating everything out of nothing, but rather reordering His former creation into new habitable land for humans and animals. Now, who do you think would be the obvious candidate for a rebellion before the creation of humans? Satan. Think about it. Most people, when reading the creation narrative, never stop to ask themselves where and when angels are created. Job says that the sons of God shouted for joy when he laid the foundation of the earth. I suspect that they were created many thousands, millions, or possibly billions of years before we were.
Over $1,300,000,000,300 million.
It would not make sense for Satan to rebel within a week, month, or year of his birth if we placed angels in a young earth narrative. I believe that Satan and his angels had a role in the earth becoming full of chaos, formless and void in their rebellion against God before man's time. And in order to harmonize these ideas with the first chapter of Genesis and what we find in Jeremiah 4, Isaiah 45, and Ezekiel 23, the gap theory becomes a plausible idea. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for my next video in which I explore Satan's rebellion, which may be outlined in the book of Ezekiel.